Good morning, Sense of Things audience. It's Jeff and Ron here for another update on what's going on in the world, what's going on in the economy, and what's going on with some fun, goofy little facts. Today's show, we're going to really focus on really some interesting facts about business around the world. Ron's got some really great things for us to cover. Of course, we're coming into a very weird week with the former president almost being killed. We've got the Republican National Convention, and just the world's weird right now. Ron, how you doing, brother?
Good. Listen, how many times have we said it? Never a dull moment, and I don't think that could be more true than today between events over the weekend, some economic news,
Mm.
and obviously just we're in the middle of the summer, the heart of the summer right now.
Yeah.
I can't believe. I know we said this all the time. Like we're already more than halfway through the
Yeah.
year. And
We're
you know
rolling
what?
into the
And
back half.
people mock me about 105, 110, 115-degree weather.
Yeah.
It's 100 degrees all over the country now.
I know, except for Texas, where we've been in the 90s for weeks. We just hit 100 again. I think we've had a total of 11 days over 100, and we're already mid-July at this point. So just the weirdest year ever. Yeah. Massachusetts was like on the high 90s, which is hilarious for this time of the year.
I know back east in New York, Jersey, and PA, and where I know a lot of people, they got heat warnings. They're like
Yeah.
telling everybody, you better carry water, all that good. Or if you don't have to go outside, don't go outside. It's almost a thunderstorm coming. Don't
Yeah.
go outside. It's
Yeah.
nuts.
In Texas, we just call that summer, but just saying.
Yeah, but you know what? When you guys get hail, it's not
Yeah.
the size of a golf ball. It's like
Oh
the
no,
size.
a baseball. We've had like multiple storms throughout the spring this year that had softball size hail. Just literally people's cars getting destroyed out here. And I've been lucky, knock wood, that we haven't really had anything at our house or at our office again. We had a bad storm a couple of years ago here at the
Oh,
office, and my former business partner's vehicle and my assistant's vehicle, both of them looked like golf balls by the time they were done. So,
yeah, not good. I've been part of hail and I've seen some decent size
yeah.
hail, but nothing like what you guys get.
Everything's bigger in Texas, dude.
Yeah, that's why you got to keep your car covered at all
Yeah,
times, or else you look like a dimpled golf ball.
exactly, exactly. You've got some cool stuff for us, so why don't we kick off with your fun facts today?
Yeah, so I got two more fun facts. This is wrapping up my little series. And I always like the origin of things. I'm a real history guy,
Yeah.
nostalgic. This was interesting because at one time you had VHS and Betamax kind of go competing with each other. And George Atkinson actually opened the first video rental store
Huh.
in 1977. And this is what I thought was interesting. The idea came to him after he saw an ad for 20th Century Fox selling movies on VHS and Betamax. And he was like, wow, what if I got this and I rented it out? Because
Mm-hmm.
remember then, movies would cost like 70 to $100 for a videotape.
Yeah.
It was big. 20 years later, you could buy it for 15 bucks. He was running a business renting out the Super 8 movies, and he's, gee, somebody's going to rent these. Boom, right place, right time, right thought. And
Mm-hmm.
then here he was. And then he used to rent out movies and projectors for parties. Now VHSs, remember at one time they were like $2,000, $3,000.
Yeah.
And then they came down. And I think it really started to grow exponentially when it hit about $1,000 for a VHS. And then
Mm-hmm.
almost you had one in at least almost every home. I don't
Yeah.
know when you got your first VHS. I think we got ours in 81. And it was
Yeah. It
it
had
was
to have
a, it
been
was a
around then.
portable unit. I don't even know where my father
Yeah.
got it from.
Yeah. It was around then, probably 81, 82, somewhere in that time period. I just don't really remember watching because we were in a little bit of a different world because my uncle was in the satellite business. So we had satellite
Oh,
and we had Showtime. So we had in the days when Showtime was actually a terrestrial antenna, we had Showtimes. We always had Showtime and Cinemax
I didn't even know
for.
Showtime was on the open air.
Oh yeah. It was you had to have the special antenna for it and all
Ah,
that
of course.
and the equipment that would decode it. But yes, yeah, so my uncle installed one in our house probably in the early 80s. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. And we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. And we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 channels a day. So we were getting like 2 or 3 the brand new movies and everything else. And it really didn't cost it. I think you just had you didn't pay for the service, you just paid for the equipment back then. We got the equipment for free, and so we always had Showtime and Cinemax, and that was the good days when it was Skinemax. It was the good movies too for a young man. Yeah, it was actually pretty awesome. But yeah, I don't remember when we got our first VCR, but it was probably even later than that because we had new movies, so there was no other reason to go.
I remember one of my friends had one in 78 or 79, and this thing looked like a piece of furniture.
Yes.
They couldn't even put it on top of the TV. It was on like its own separate shelf, and it was just crazy.
The new Russian minicam. Yeah.
But I thought this was interesting with this guy. He started out with 50
titles, baby.
Can you imagine showing somebody like that back then, like a Netflix that has thousands of titles?
Oh my God, their heads would explode. So
yeah,
it always reminds me of the Moscow and the Hudson with Robin Williams with the coffee scene, where he goes into he comes from Russia.
More than one flavor.
And he goes into the coffee aisle, and his people he was staying with, they're like, we need you to go get some coffee. So he goes into the coffee aisle, and he's standing there, and he's going, and it's like everywhere, and he just collapses in the aisle from all the choices.
Wait, you have more than one type of bread?
Yeah, exactly. Bread, and we have coffee.
All right.
But hell, I figure if you had 50 titles at $50 a pop, man, that's $2,500 worth of movies that you'd have to have.
Years ago, before we get into this, Carrefour, which is like the Walmart of France, tried to come over to the US about 30 years ago and failed miserably.
Yeah.
I didn't know this because Walmart's pretty big in China. Sure. Walmart failed in Germany partly because it didn't care for the smiley customer service. If you think about it, like the German comedian doesn't smile, stoic zombie face. And I thought this was interesting. It tried to go into Germany in 2008. Had 84 stores in Germany and lost about $1 billion.
I've got a good friend of mine that actually went over there and was setting those up. He was working for Walmart at the time, my insurance agent. He was working for Walmart at the time, and he was in Germany setting most of those things up. So that's hilarious.
And the funny thing is, you have a product that you think, all right, this is universal. I'll give you an example. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of his, I think he's as dry as chalk. But Howard Schultz of Starbucks.
Yep.
Can you imagine the big ones to basically say, I don't care that there's over 1 billion people in China drinking tea. We're gonna make them drink coffee.
Yeah.
These are people that 50 years ago had dirt roads.
Yeah.
And had done things the same way they had for thousands of years. And you're going to try and bring coffee into China.
Yeah.
Everybody wants something that's American, right? They want Coca-Cola and they want Starbucks coffee.
Well, and it's funny, though. I can understand.
China? Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, I can understand why Walmart wouldn't have. They don't like that kind of big boxy type stuff. Everything really mostly in Europe is relatively small. They've got like big supermarkets and stuff like that, but they don't have these big multi-store type places. They've got a few of them, but it's few and far between.
Is Costco in Europe?
I should know that. I don't remember seeing any. We're mostly in the touristy places, so I don't really remember seeing any. But
I don't think they are.
You've got like Marks and Spencer in UK, which I guess it's Walmart-esque in that it's like bolting a Target on top of a really nice food market.
Right.
It's basically the way I've always explained them.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. All right.
And no smiley customer service. We don't like that. No smiley
customer service. You know what? I was reading this article in Yahoo Finance. I'm like, hey, you know what? This might be interesting to the audience because I thought years ago, and I'm talking about years ago, I thought checks were good for 6 months.
Okay.
And then what you end up finding out is it differs by bank. Yeah. I remember years ago, I forgot, I got some kind of a refund for $1.28. And I held on to it for a year and I said, let me see if I can cash this thing. And I was able to. But there are some banks that do have limits on it after a period of time, which I thought was interesting because you would think that they should be good for a year. I don't know if you've ever run into this situation or anybody's ever asked you about this, but it differs by bank to bank. Just by the way, just like Zelle, which I had to use twice. And I said, what's the limit? And they said, oh, it varies from bank to bank. And I'm like, wait a minute, isn't Zelle a separate service? And some banks will only do up to $1,000 a month,
Okay.
and other banks will do up to 2,000 a month.
Okay.
First, I didn't even know that number one, there was a limit on a transaction, and number two, that there was a limit per month, which I didn't understand and I
Yeah.
couldn't get a good explanation. But at least with the checks, I get it.
Well, and I think probably the reason for the max per month being a relatively low amount is then they don't have to go through the process of filing, because now, of course, the IRS has gotten uber
Oh, for the
intrusive into
any
everything.
anti-money money laundering?
Well, it's not money laundering. It's just that they want to screw all the people that are doing like super small businesses and things like that. So they've gotten to the point where they want to know every transaction that's happening for people in PayPal and all that type of stuff. They've been on this kick because we're going to stick it to the billionaires who are using PayPal at that point. So,
Hey, PayPal's making money. They might not be making as much money, but look,
yeah.
they're milking a few cents off of every transaction.
Well, I'm not saying pay, but no, they're trying to go after people that have little side gigs and stuff
Oh
like
yeah, the
that.
side
And
hustles.
this
Yeah.
our 80,000 IRS agents that were gonna go after the billionaires, and all they've done is go after little small people that can't
The
fight
billionaires
back.
is a
So
finite universe. You don't need 80,000 IRS people for that.
not the slightest, and they have the money to fight everything. The little small guy, they'll just go after the little small guy and beat him up. The guy that's driving Uber a few hours a day, that's where they're going to make their billions back.
There's an audit trail of all that. That's why I use Lyft.
Yeah.
I always like working with the company in second position because they're always trying harder. And
Yep.
if you ask most Uber, Lyft drivers that are hybrids, they use
Hmm.
both. Most of them will say that they like Lyft better than Uber because they pay faster and I think a higher percentage. I'm
Hmm.
not sure, but the great thing about that, you never have to take cash out of your pocket.
No, like I said, in a lot of cases where I used to rent a car when we would travel and stuff like that, we just don't rent a car anymore. It's cheaper in the long run where I don't have to park a car. I can have a vehicle when I need it. And in most cases, we travel places where there's trains and everything else so that we can, if we're going on a longer trip, we take the train. If not, you're in city. Why not
Yeah.
just take a Lyft
Oh,
or
if
an
you're in the
Uber? It's way
city,
easier.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's no reason to rent a car. All
Yeah.
right. So the last one, I thought this was interesting because
Hmm.
we're always talking about this in our country as far as the average life expectancy and what we pay for health. And I thought this was interesting that we have one of the lowest life expectancies out of all of the major countries, and we have the highest
And we spend
cost.
ridiculous amounts of money
And
on it.
Howard Dean, who ran for president with the primal scream back in what, 92, 94, I didn't know he was a doctor. And after he dropped out of the race, he's a very actually smart and eloquent speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And he had talked about one of the major problems with healthcare in our country is we treat the sick and not the healthy,
Yep.
meaning the idea is that we should be showing and teaching people how to remain healthy, how to live a healthy lifestyle. And obviously, a tremendous amount is poor food choices and lack of exercise.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought our life expectancy was around 80,
Yeah.
70 for women, 80 for men. But the cost per person is insane.
It's
And
atrocious.
everybody always
Yeah.
laughs about Canada's socialistic medicine system.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, their life expectancy is higher than ours,
Yeah.
and their
And they
cost is
spend
only
half
two
the
thirds as
amount. Yeah.
ours.
Yeah. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Like I said, and the fact that, one, we don't treat that. Japan, I think, is the best story. I caught an article recently, and I'd encourage people to go look for it. I'll see if I can put it into the show notes. But I caught an article written by Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson, and it was just really outstanding article talking about like heart health and everything else. And he was talking about Japan, and Japan, like 40 or 50 years ago, just completely focused on heart health and everything else. And they made it a major national cause and everything else. And obviously, it's paying off because they've got one of the oldest populations, and they're living forever, and they're spending the least amount of money of any major country on it.
But don't forget, what is typically their core diet? Fish and rice.
Yep. Fish and
And
rice.
how often, I always said, do you ever see like grossly obese people in Japan? And the answer is, yeah, the sumo wrestlers.
Yeah,
They're eating
sumo
Kentucky
wrestlers.
Fried Chicken and
The
McDonald's.
scary,
Right?
yeah, the scary thing is those guys are actually pretty healthy and they eat a pretty damn healthy diet. They
Right.
just eat a lot of it
They eat a
at
lot of
that point.
carbs.
Yeah. Yeah,
There is a lot.
but still, they're such a small part of the population, it doesn't make a difference. But other than that, pretty much the rest of the population are extremely thin
They're big walkers. They standard like walking after dinner, walking after a meal.
yep,
What do? We go from the dinner table to the couch, you
yep,
know,
and watch
and
TV. Yeah, we
so
overeat and then sit
guilty
there and
every now
watch
and then. But
TV. So
okay, so that's what I got for this week.
okay,
Pretty good stuff. And got some good feedback from some of our viewers, some of my clients. They're enjoying what we're doing. I think they like the shorter formats. Who knows? But
yeah.
just want to remind everybody to hydrate, eat more fish and rice, and walk after dinner.
Please do, and not sit there and watch the boob tube forever. It's completely useless. Next show that we've got coming up, I'm going to do a show for us on 5 or actually 6 stocks that I think are just interesting stories during the upcoming earnings season. We just began earnings season, so I've got 6 of them. One of them's already reported, and it turned out to be an extraordinarily interesting story. Make sure you tune in for the next time. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button, hit the upvote, let us know that you're there. We're getting tons and tons of upvotes. So obviously you guys are enjoying what we're doing. So make sure you stay in touch so that we can get these out to you. Thanks a lot, and we will see you guys back here the very next time.